It seems to me the girls came across a cub, got too close, and the mother attacked. We didn't find any sign of cub. Fine. We didn't find any sign of bear anywhere. Well, she ate and buried the rest of her meal for later. Why would she come down? If she came down for food. There's more than enough food and fish for him up there. Maybe not enough fish. Hang on to your sick humor, Doc. It's not sick. She was hungry enough to eat 2 women. But bears don't eat people. This one did.
Look, Scotty, you may be some kind of authority on all this, but what you're talking about is science fiction, of fairy tale.
Science, yeah. Fiction, no. See, the only known grizzlies that large were called Arctodus ursus horribilis.
Oh.
And they was the mightiest carnivores in the Pleistocene era.
No, well, when was that?
About 1 million years ago.
Ah, he's a mere baby then.
Well, he was a hardy ancestor that managed to hang in there.
What the hell's a million-year-old grizzly doing here?
He's looking for food.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy, heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, sponsored by your national park system, or something still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And with me in the Bear Cave again is my illustrious leader in the Comic Book Bears, Mr. Bill Zanowitz, the Esquire.
Esquire, yes, I am an Esquire. I am. I paid for that Esquire. I paid for those 3 damn letters after my name. You didn't introduce me as executive producer.
Oh, an executive producer who gets the credit but doesn't have to do the work.
Not one damn thing.
But anyway, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining me again. And we've been talking about this one for a while.
A while, yeah. And thank you for letting me have this outlet, as I still haven't changed out of work clothes. I had 10 meetings today. 10. And I need something like this. We've, like you said, Steve, we've talked a long time about doing another Jawsploitation.
Yep.
And we're going almost to the beginning with this one.
Really, I have to say, because we did Jaws 1. We then did Jaws 2, which I guess technically is kind of Jawsploitation, but more, it's a direct sequel. So
it's like a marquee version of Jawsploitation.
Yeah, exactly. Like this one's an intentional Jawsploitation because it's Jaws.
Yep.
The movie that we're talking about today is probably, like you said, the first true, do I want to say ripoff? I mean, do I want to be that strong about it?
I think it's fair to say mockbusters start with this, at least in the current day. Of course, over films, you had war films that were very much like another Westerns, really did a lot of the same things. There were like a lot of fake Abbott and Costellos, So, that element has always been there. But I think for how we know a derivative, a mockbuster, this kind of is on the ground floor of that stuff.
Absolutely. And the fact that it came after what's considered the first true summer blockbuster with Jaws, and then this thing comes out the following year.
And is a blockbuster in itself, too.
It is, which is really surprising. Usually when you talk about or when you see a lot of derivative, clear copies or, more than inspiration kind of films that come out, they're usually, at least nowadays, straight to home video, straight to video on demand. They're very independent, so the distribution is poor or sometimes almost non-existent. So you don't really expect to have something that comes out that's blatantly based on something that came out the year before with just a few key things changed. And we'll talk about those. And then also go on to make money. And it made money internationally too. I think it was because it was fully independent. I remember reading a lot of things. There's a lot of fluctuating numbers on here. Nobody's super clear about it, but it was definitely made for under $1 million. And it made over $30 million in the U.S. and abroad. So, and that was just in its theatrical
It made $38 million, and I think with the inflation calculator is correct, that would have been about $450,000 nowadays.
But 450 million?
Sorry, $450 million.
The deflation calculator will tell us.
Yeah. Well, look at the
well,
time we're living in. That's
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely it did gangbusters. It did good money.
Yeah.
For something that was so
it was the
derivative.
8th highest grossing film in the U.S. of 1976. And I think it was also like you said, it's an independent film. So it was on different circuits. You know, it was on the drive-in circuit, on the grindhouse circuit, but also legit theaters were also showing this. I do get a bit confused about the history of the film because there are some versions of the poster that were clearly Paramount is distributing it. I don't know if that was a reissue or it started in independent markets and Paramount. You know, even something as recent as 1976, some of the history is kind of undocumented. So I was trying to find some specifics because those stories just fascinate me, and there's a lot of fascinating. And we still haven't even named the movie yet.
Right? Maybe we should name this movie. So Bill, tell us, what is this Jawsploitation? I would say the first true example of Jawsploitation.
There was a TV
film
before.
Oh yeah. But in film from 1976 by infamous director William Girdler. What is this movie?
It is the 1976 film that's not in the sea, places the terror on land, Grizzly.
That's one thing they've swapped out. So it doesn't take place on the ocean. It doesn't take place on a beach community. Instead, it is a national park. Mm-hmm. So up in the woods, they've got cabins, they've got campers, they've got all sorts of national park stuff going on during this season. And instead of a shark, a grizzly bear.
Very big grizzly bear.
Who are very scary grizzly bears. But yeah, so we've got, you know, pretty much all the elements that we would have in Jaws, except now on land, and now it's a big four-legged furry thing as opposed to a fish.
Why don't you go through the plot, and then we can talk about some of the tropes that we see again from Jaws, because there's plenty.
There are plenty, yes. So first off, like I said, this is taking place in a national park service. We have the lead park ranger is getting everybody together to make sure that everyone's having a good time out there. Everybody's being safe out in the park range. And unfortunately, a large predator of some sort, who we do find out is a grizzly bear, is going around murdering campers, murdering people that it comes across, sometimes other rangers, sometimes families that live nearby. And throughout all of this, they're trying to not just track down the grizzly bear, but find a way to stop it. And there's a lot of poor intervention from the government liaison, doesn't really know how to handle this. The park rangers themselves sometimes feel a little bit out of sorts because this is not something that they normally would do. We've also got a naturist who is out there, who knows nature, who knows the animals on this ridge, and yet is still, unfortunately, not able to track down this bear in the way that he thinks he should be able to. So there's chaos, there's concern, there's fear, there's lots of limbs that are torn off in the course of this film. I would have to say, comparatively, this is way bloodier and gorier in many parts than Jaws was. And this kind of goes more into R-rated territory, where Jaws is reasonably still okay in PG territory.
But it was released as PG.
Yeah, which is shocking to me. But I think also, again, this is early rating systems. I mean, we're only talking, the MPAA ratings as they stood. We've only been around for a short period of time at this point. And I guess horrific natural violence between bear and young child, for example,
But no F word.
or
Yeah, so
bathing beauty.
no F word.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody swears. So it's good. But yeah, I mean, there's a shocking amount of death in this, and really, deaths of main characters are pretty commonplace in this film. Several people that you're introduced to meet untimely ends, sometimes right before the end of the film. You don't know who's going to be sticking around, which is nice, and the surprises here and there. Let's just say there are some moments where may not be necessarily terrifying moments, but certainly reactive moments that really got me. So hopefully, does that kind of give the general impression of this?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the true story and like all the characters and the relationships, not necessarily super important, but the general flow of this is similar to what you would see in Jaws. You've got the creature, you've got people who are victims, you've got a government official who wants to kind of keep the whole thing quiet and doesn't really take it seriously. And then you've got a guy with the badge who wants to get it done, and the only way he knows how to stop it is to kill this creature. So let's talk about what happens in this movie.
Okay.
One of the things I did mention right off is that the kills in this, there are more than there were in Jaws. I think that's right off the bat. That's one thing. Kill count is pretty high.
Yeah, and it's also like a strange balance because there's some that are like overt, and then there's others where I don't want to say they're obscured, but they let the mood dictate more than the actual gore. I mainly think of the waterfall scene.
Yeah, with the park ranger
which is left more to your imagination. The first kill is stunning, I think.
Yeah.
I love that kill.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I was shocked by that first kill. And the first two actually were.
The first two, they're kind of together,
right,
they're in such rapid succession. But very different too, yeah. But very different.
Absolutely. And probably the one that to me I think was the most shocking. There's a point where the Grizzly encounters a mother and a son who I guess live nearby to the mountain range, to the park range. And the little boy's got his bunny rabbit that he brought in from outside. They close the gate, and the Grizzly comes smashing through the gate, picks up the little boy, and starts tearing pieces off. Now, you don't see the actual tearing, but you do see the outcome, and he drops the body of the boy. And it's briefly on screen, but you're like, there's legs missing, there's arms missing, this kid is covered in blood. And then, of course, he, picks up the mom and smooshes her head. But the kid still survives, because I think in this movie, they couldn't go that extra step and actually have the kid die.
Yeah.
But sure, he can be disfigured and maimed for life. Why not?
Yeah. And it's not like the kid in Jaws where it's kind of left to your imagination.
But yeah, I mean, the kills and the action, I have to give William Girdler props here for this, because he does not automatically or right away reveal the Grizzly.
No.
Most, in fact, probably the first half of the movie, you only see from the POV of the bear. You don't see the bear's limbs. You don't see the bear itself really at all. It's really just
see flashes
from the perspective,
of fur, and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, flash of fur and then bloody body parts, screaming victims, all of that. And it isn't until about halfway through that you start seeing more of the actual bear itself, until finally a full reveal of the standing bear. And then, of course, at the very end of the movie, you do get full-on shots of the bear a lot more frequently. And some of that could be just because of how they were able to use the bear. Because just like Jaws, they planned to have stock footage of bears and then a big old mechanical bear that they're going to use for a lot of the close-up shots and a lot of those things. And the funniest thing that I saw, that I read about it, was like somebody left the bear out in the rain and it broke. So they were like, well, I guess we're going to have to hire a trained bear. Trained, but not tame. So they were unable to actually have any full scenes with the bear and the actors together in close proximity. They had to film the bear separately because it trained, but not tame. And nobody wants to deal with that payout, if insurance payout, if one of those actors gets mauled. So
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that the bear actor was named Teddy, 11 feet tall, not 18, 11 feet tall. That's still a very, very big bear.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And apparently he loved marshmallows, and a lot of the performance was coaxed with the temptation of marshmallows.
Human flesh, marshmallows. I
So,
mean,
yeah.
marshmallows.
But
every
apparently
time.
it wasn't easy with Teddy. He still had a wild streak in him, but
Right.
no one got hurt. Nobody got hurt. But
Yes, yeah. Which on a low budget film like this that is making use of a true wild animal, yes, trained, but with a wild animal, you kind of have to pay a lot, and you have to do a lot for safety training. And I don't think in the 70s they were really big on that. But I think I also read that the bear got the equivalent of, what was it, $850 a day for filming, which probably all went through one, food, so a lot of marshmallows, and also housing and transportation and all that stuff to make sure the bear was well cared for.
I think with a lot of these low budget movies, it probably was not that uncommon that the actors did not get paid anywhere near the animal talent.
No.
But
then again, you usually wouldn't have to have the animal talent around for all that long of a time. They would film several scenes like in a few days or a week or so.
I give them props for using a live animal,
Yeah.
in a time where CGI and other options weren't available, that they decided to go through that route. Not so great for the animal, taken out of its natural environment, but Teddy apparently led a very long life. Kudos, Teddy. He's a marshmallow. Good
MVP actor of this film, Teddy.
Well, he's a lot better actor than one of the actors, as far as I'm
concerned. Man. Yeah, and I again, I don't like to like heap a lot of negative criticism on, especially on an indie film like this. Yeah. But there were some performances that you were wondering if this was like maybe their first real job,
or somebody owed them a favor. I think the three main actors, and we should at least give them some props here: Christopher George, Andrew Prine, and Richard Jekyll were very familiar names, especially with TV films at the time. So I think people went into the film, there's some familiarity with the actors. It gives you a comfort level as you're seeing, again, not big names of the 70s, but certainly working actors that people saw time and again, whether it was guest shots on TV series, in some cases, some recurring TV roles, and also, the TV movie aspect, which was huge in the 70s.
Oh, huge. Even into the 80s, TV movies were such a big deal. You would have every Sunday or every Friday or Monday night movies or whatever.
Friday movie of the week, yeah.
Oh, yeah. These great, all sorts of genres, dramas, comedies, fantasy, all sorts of things would be put on screen with a huge stock of actors that were made famous by these. There was one actor that I know you didn't mention, and that was Joan McCall, who plays sort of the love interest.
Sort of. If I may borrow from one of my favorite podcasters, Karina Longworth, Joan McCall sucks.
Yeah.
She's really bad. And especially because the three principals, most of her scenes are with
Christopher George, the Michael Kelly character. Yeah.
But it's like she's acting in a different movie than the other people in it. It's almost like, like a precursor to Nicolas Cage. It's just, they're not on the same wavelength, where the three members of the main cast, there's a very unified front. They know what they need to do, and you buy them in those roles. But, poor Joan. She was just, so like a little long in the tooth, I think, for the role, with some of the stuff that they were mentioning in the action. But whenever she was on, I was, I just really like, kind of a thankless role. I get that, but you don't have to play it thankless.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to, we haven't really talked about the writing for this, the script for this. So, I mean, obviously this is a Jawsploitation film. Filmmakers who came up with that idea, they were like, hey, this is going to make money too. And it's because one of the main writers of this, Harvey Flaxman, he was taking a summer trip camping in national parks during the summer of 75, which was the summer of Jaws, and came up or was inspired to write about a killer grizzly because when he was stopping his RV at one of the parks, the ranger who was there was like, hey, be careful, stay in your RV at night because there's a hungry grizzly bear out there.
Yeah.
And, it just fireworks in his head that were like, I know what I'm going to write. So he got together with his writing partner, David Sheldon, and they banged out the script for Grizzly. Clearly, they didn't need to really work too much on those set pieces because there's a lot that are very similar to Jaws, and then contacted William Girdler, because they had worked with him previously, summer or two before, on another film, and were like, this will be perfect. This is right up his alley to direct. And so the three of them were like, hey, let's get this movie made. The problem, I think, with the script on this one is because there's only so much that they could bring in from Jaws, and having a female lead, especially with this, with what they wanted to do with this, it didn't really work.
Right.
And so the female lead she has nothing to do.
Yeah, well, it's just also surprising because the first two kills are women, and they're 10 times more interesting than this woman through the entire film.
I had my notes when watching this is like, are they girlfriends?
You don't
is
know.
This a couple?
Yeah.
Or are they sisters? Friends?
All we
just
know is
out in
there's
the
a
middle of nowhere?
connection. That's all we know.
There's a connection.
Yeah.
One of them goes off to find to go to the bathroom, basically, and the other one is working the little fire at the campsite. She loses her head right away, and the girl who ran off to use the bathroom, she finds a little shack to hide in, and you think, okay, well, this will be okay. No, shack gets ripped apart to rip her apart. Like her limbs end up in like the rafters. So you're just sort of like, my God, nobody is safe. Nothing is safe in this film for these poor women, because it happens broad daylight.
Yeah, I think that's one of the failures of the film is that if this creature is so ravenous, why is he leaving so many limbs behind?
Oh, absolutely. There is even there's a comment there, and it becomes a plot point later on where bears are known for burying their food and come back and eat it later.
Yeah.
Well, this one didn't bury all that much, so I'm like, I guess he just wanted to slash up a couple bodies and then leave them lying around.
He figured it wasn't halal or something, and just,
it's like, I don't know. She had a funny taste. She tasted like potpourri. I don't something like that.
Yeah, I like the arms. I don't like the legs. Like that.
The heads are kind of messy anyway.
Yeah. Eyes don't taste right. Yeah,
always looking at me. Always looking at.
It takes a long time to get the tongue down. Yeah.
For me, that's where kind of the weakness was in this movie, is around the dialogue and with unfortunately her character, Joan Nichol's character of Allison. But you're right, like the main three do have a reasonable dynamic.
Yeah,
that's not unlike the trio in Jaws.
Yeah, it's not that dream chemistry that you see in Jaws, and again, chemistry sometimes can be like opposing forces. Here, it's a lot more muted, but you buy the situation that these three are in through the entire film.
The naturist, I think, was pretty. He's a fascinating character. I think it's Richard Jacobs. Arthur Scott is the name of the character, who spends all of his time in the wild, dressed in furs and like in lean-tos, and
has effectively left society.
Yeah,
a quite friendlier Unabomber, I guess.
He's a Unabomber without a cabin, or bombs. Really, he doesn't use the postal service.
Yeah,
but he does have a very large and expensive radio for some reason. But he comes down from the mountain and he's there to help out as best he can. He doesn't listen very well when they make plans, and kind of goes off on his own a bit. I think his sort of direction, his arc in this film is fascinating, even if his death is kind of frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Spoilers: most of these characters do not make it out at the end of the movie. But yeah, the main two, I would say the main two buddies, Christopher George's Michael Kelly, and then Don Stober, played by Andrew Prine. I think they're pretty much the pairing throughout most of this movie.
They're effectively, the Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah. And the benefit that Andrew Prine brings is, of course, the helicopter. So, which is fun. And you would think it would be a little bit more effective, unfortunately. Not until the end. And then the bear does some stuff with the helicopter that maybe the filmmakers for Jaws 2 saw and decided that they wanted to try their hand at it as well.
Do it
because
better.
we'll do it better,
which wasn't
on the water. Because yes, the bear does bring down well, not so much bring down the helicopter, but flips the damn thing over. And it is a pretty wild scene. There's a lot kind of going on screen in this movie, but I know that there's some stuff off screen. There's some interesting drama. There's some interesting history in this movie. How it got made. We kind of talked about, I already mentioned how it was written and how they came up with the idea. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Maybe with the production company as well as the director himself.
Yeah.
Very interesting stories.
Why don't you talk about the director and then I'll talk about the production company.
Sure.
So we have a nice tag team here.
So the director on this was William Girdler. He was very young. He was in his 20s when he made this film. He actually had only been directing films since, I think, 1972. So William Girdler's first movie was in 1972, Asylum of Satan. Apparently it was very blurry, hard to watch, but he followed that up with 3 on a Meat Hook. He also did Abby, which was a full-on knockoff of The Exorcist, but a blaxploitation version of The Exorcist. Did great in movie theaters for 2 weeks, and then Warner Brothers caught wind of it and was like, shut this shit down.
Yeah.
So it was making a lot of money, and unfortunately they had to stop. But I mean, he kind of found a niche here, making films based on or, very strongly inspired by other films that were kind of hits at the time.
Right.
So even 3 on a Meat Hook was loosely based on Psycho, inspired by the murders of Ed Gein.
Right. And then after Grizzly was one of almost as big a hit, Day of the Animals.
Day of the Animals, which again, live animals kind of going crazy. Leslie Nielsen shirtless, looking really hot, shockingly, which I constantly get mixed up with Grizzly because I'm like, there's bears in both of them, right? And then also the Manitou, which I think is probably one that most people might know him from or might know that film.
It played on cable a lot. And it was also like a major studio film. It was Paramount, I believe. And,
1978, I think, for that one. And he also did also starring Leslie Nielsen, a spy thriller. I think it was Project Kill, which was an almost direct
Which is one
ripoff.
I've never heard of.
It was almost a direct ripoff of a Sam Peckinpah film that came out the year before. He made 9 movies very quickly in the 70s, within that decade, and was just about to make his 10th film. He was scouting locations in 1980 in Thailand, and unfortunately, there was a severe helicopter accident. Ironic, I think, that we're talking about Grizzly with this. Helicopter accident, and he's presumed dead. They never found the bodies of him or the pilot, but apparently it was not a pretty wreck. So unless he's out there somewhere ready to spring his latest movie on us, he unfortunately did pass away in 1980 at the age of 30. So he had made 9 films before the age of 30, and some of them were actually really successful for being all independent films.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of unfortunate, but I mean, you can see his work, and it is distinct for being very wacky, sometimes derivative, but also you can see a spark of something there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always go to the initial scene, the opening credits, which you think you're in for a beautifully expansive film, and that was filmed without the benefit of drones it just amazes me. It's just beautiful landscape shots. Doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the film, except establishing that there's a helicopter pilot. But it's really gorgeous, really gorgeous. And I think we also have to give some shout out to the cinematographer, William Assman, which,
Right.
you know, dude, I'm so sorry about your name. He's the ass man. And I was reading up on him. You know, he has a few cinematography credits, but he was also a very strong working camera operator. And through many shows that you know, like Star Trek Next Generation and Seventh Heaven. So he did have a very long career, just not in the cinematographer role. You could tell, I mean, especially with the way some of the kills were framed, even some of the what are normally just two-head dialogue were breathed out. He was, I think, a pretty talented cinematographer.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, you know, sometimes it is so hand in hand with the director that it's hard to tell where the idea germinated from. But from that standpoint, for how the film is filmed, it's much more impressive than many low budget films. Much more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why this is popular. And I don't think it was just because people just wanted more Jaws any way they could get it. I think that there was enough in this movie to draw people to the cinema. Now, it didn't do very well with critics. The dialogue is not great, and some of the editing is all over the place. But I mean, there is enough here, and I can see why you like it, why you enjoy it, because there's those kernels of like, this could have been a much better movie than it ended up being. But it's definitely fascinating. It's fun to watch nowadays and just kind of see like, hey, that's a cool idea. That's a cool idea. So, but yeah. But you were saying about the music too. Like the music, I have to say, definitely is much more than I would expect again for an independent film.
The beginning is a little weird because like that almost felt like stock music, but then when they get into the actual action of the film, some really nice marriages of sound and image.
Right.
And the composer was Robert O'Rangland, and he has a bit of a cult following. Again, mostly low budget films. About the biggest name outside of this was, I'd say, Q the Winged Serpent. A few major studio films that weren't necessarily big hits. As the 80s went on, he also does a lot with Cannon films, particularly the Charles Bronson Cannon films. So, another person who was very much a working composer.
This isn't a, shot by friends of a friends of a friend kind of thing. Yeah. This for an independent film, it had, I would say, a pretty
high production quality. Yeah. Pretty high.
And that kind of brings me, it kind of makes me think a little bit about Halloween and what happened with the filming of Halloween, where you had young filmmakers who nevertheless had access to really amazing equipment and talent and were able to put something together that really goes well beyond.
There is a connection between Grizzly and Halloween in the box office of being a particular champion. Grizzly took the crown of highest grossing independent film from Deep Throat. There's an asterisk there because Deep Throat was a mob finance film, so God knows what they didn't report. At least with what was reported, Grizzly then took the highest, and then Halloween 2 years later. Actually, like 3 years later, because Halloween was a slow build-up. By 1979, it had become the highest grossing independent film.
That is kind of one of the interesting things about Grizzly, is that it did so well, especially coming after Jaws being a major studio blockbuster, that this became basically like the indie blockbuster.
And I would not be surprised if there were people in Hollywood saw this, and a lot of the marketing for films like Orca and The Deep the following year probably were very influenced, because it was heavily promoted on TV. I remember those commercials as a kid. I couldn't con my parents into taking me, but I certainly remember those commercials as a kid. And I think we talked about this. It probably had a lot more outlets than some independent films, because certainly it would have been high on the drive-in circuit and the regular grindhouse circuit. But I also think your average like 2-screen, 3-screen theaters, and I could see, a Paramount and a Universal and this thing playing in there at the same time.
Right.
Absolutely. Because, again, there's a bit of a built-in audience, that are looking for the next Jaws. And, it was the one that was in line at that time.
And there were talks of a sequel at some point. And there was a sequel filmed, not with William Girdler because he had passed away. And it took a little bit of extra time because of some issues with the finances or possibly the profits from this film and the production.
I think that leads us into our discussion of the distributor, which was an entity called Film Ventures International. I mean, how Acme company can you get for a film distribution? And the guy that spearheaded this was a real character, Edward Montoro. Initially, they started in distribution of spaghetti westerns, and some of those did pretty well. Their first really big film was Beyond the Door with Juliette Mills, which was kind of an Exorcist-ish film. And again, another movie that Warner Brothers filed a lawsuit, but by the time that they did file, Beyond the Door was enough of a profiter that it really kind of didn't matter. Kept producing films, again, for the most part, low budget. There were, got into some karate films like Kill or Be Killed, Kill and Kill Again. And then the last film that the company produced was a film called Mutant in 1984. And there was some really shady stuff that went on in regards to where money went, where money was promised to co-distributors. And in 1985, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after Mutant kind of underperformed. And he was also, Edward Montoro was also in the middle of a pretty expensive divorce. And come 1986, he disappears. No one has seen him since. It's believed that he fled to Mexico and lived under an assumed name. Nobody knows if he's still alive. He was born in 1936. So, odds are, it's kind of 50-50 about his life. But
90 this year. Yeah.
Again, just going up with throwing up the flagpole that you did about, just weird stuff that happens behind the scenes. That's probably the weirdest.
When you're director, promising I would say promising career, just 4 years later ends up in a helicopter crash. Your big financier / distributor ends up stealing a lot of money, bankrupting his distribution company, and then disappearing to Mexico possibly. There's just it's interesting. It's weird.
And again, there's a lot of stories to talk about Grizzly too. We probably should do our own show about that, but there's so much to say. It's filmed around a rock festival in Hungary.
There's a rock band.
It provides very early film performances from Charlie Sheen and George Clooney and Laura Dern. So there's kind of a, Nepo baby thing going on there with some of the smaller parts. So,
and also, didn't it take like 10 years to be finally released, or more?
Longer than that? Much longer than that. I think it was in the 2000s it got released, and it was filmed in 1983.
Yeah.
So, and also apparently has nothing to do with Grizzly. There's just no connective tissue apart from the name.
Well, one thing that we do like to talk about on when you're on the show with us is we like to talk about merch.
I wish some of your other guests would do this because some of them I think would have great takes on this. But I am always fascinated by how films were merchandised at the time. And this did get some merch.
It did.
Especially for an independent film, which was surprising.
I mean, there's a lot of merch. This will be a special thing, a special video for listeners who want to check out more information. You can see this on the Comic Book Bears YouTube channel at Comic Book Bears. As always, thank you so much for bringing this movie. And I love that this is the first official Jawsploitation movie that we've talked about as Grizzly. But, I love that you love these movies. I love that you
love these movies. And I just want to mention for people who are fans of Jaws, there are so many Jaws moments that we haven't talked about, especially like kind of gonzo people that join in on the bear hunt is much like
The
Jaws.
off-season hunters. Oh,
Yeah.
God, yeah.
They also have a scene that's very much like something that was from the Jaws book that wasn't in the film, where they have a live cub.
Right.
As part of the efforts to lure the grizzly in to kill him. Also, there is a comparison from Jaws where it's the 4th of July weekend, and here it is the peak of camping season.
Right.
So we have that element too. There's so many Jawsy moments. So many Jawsy
Jawsy moments.
But when it comes down to it, it's a better film than it needs to be.
That it could have been. I mean, this
Yeah.
could have been just like a piece of schlock that was in the theaters and out faster than anybody could remember. But this one, I mean, it stayed pretty well, having been the top grossing independent film of the 70s until Halloween. That's a pretty high bar that they were able to set. So, yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for joining. And can't wait till the next time.
Yeah, there will be more Jawsploitation.
Oh, yes.
There will be more. There will be more.
You've just listened to another episode of The Bear Cave of Terror, and if you haven't seen Grizzly from 1976, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, you can watch it on Prime, Tubi, Philo, Plex, and many more free streaming services. There is also a RiffTrax version available to watch or purchase digitally. And Bill, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
If you want to get in touch with me, I am on Facebook. I'm a superstar on Instagram. I am an absolute bomb on Threads. Just reach out to me through one of those venues. Blue Sky as well, under Bill Zanowitz or Bill_Zanowitz. And also, I regularly co-host the Comic Book Bears with you. And you can always access the Comic Book Bears podcast information from our social media sites.
Excellent. And also, if you just want to find out more about the Bear Cave of Terror or talk to us, you can find us on Blue Sky and Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, all one word, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. A list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Grizzly or maybe the works of William Girdler. And remember, if you are mauled and left partially buried by a grizzly, just keep playing dead until your buddies blow it up with a rocket launcher. You'll thank us later. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Who's Scott?
He's a naturalist attached to this department. You know, I think he knows every bear in this forest personally.
You guys really love what you're doing, don't you?
Yeah.